The following podcast is brought to you by SeatGeek. SeatGeek is your number one source for the best deals on sporting events, concerts, comedy shows, and a whole lot more. Go to SeatGeek.com or download the SeatGeek app and use promo code BLUESEATS for $20 off your first purchase. That's promo code BLUESEATS only at SeatGeek, the official ticketing partner of From the Blue Seats, a New York Rangers podcast. Let there be live. What is going on, Rangers fans? My name is Jimmy Fanizzi, and this is From the Blue Seats, a New York Rangers podcast presented by SeatGeek. I hope you are doing well out there. Make sure you follow us on Twitter and Instagram at BlueSeats94 and use the hashtag BlueSeats to keep the conversation going on any and all topics at hand. And make sure that you subscribe on YouTube and on all audio platforms, and be sure to rate us 5 stars. It would mean the world to us. And make sure that you follow the Hockey Podcast Network as well on all social media platforms. So, we are halfway through the National Hockey League season already. Can you freaking believe it? I cannot believe how fast this season has gone already. It really is amazing how fast the years have gone in general over the past 5 years or so. Time flies when you're having fun, I guess. But that's beside the point. Today, we are going to do a mid-season evaluation on the New York Rangers. As we stand right now, they are in first place in the Metropolitan Division at 28-13-2 with 58 points. They are in second place in the Eastern Conference behind the Boston Bruins, and they are in the top 5 in the entire league, 5th to be exact, behind the Colorado Avalanche, who are 4th, Boston, who's in 3rd, and the 2 surprising teams in the NHL this season, 2 being the Vancouver Canucks and 1 being the Winnipeg Jets. So, we are going to do a mid-season evaluation, basically stating where this team is at, what players are doing well, what players need to step up, and what we expect for the second half of the season. But if you're on the YouTube side, you can clearly see I am not alone today. I am joined by the man, the myth, the legend himself, Kyle Manifold, one of the managers here at THPN, and I am joined by Rod Peterson's lovely wife, Serena, one of the co-hosts of the Cats and Bolts podcast, which you can hear right here on this fine network. Guys, how the heck are we doing? Thank you guys for doing this with me.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much. This is great.
Oh, of course, Serena, the pleasure is all mine. And Kyle, obviously, the pleasure is all mine to have you on as well. What's going on, my man?
Not too much. Just appreciate it. And, I'm always glad to help out whenever you need me. So let's get it rolling.
Hey, you guys are welcome back anytime. But anyway, let's get into this right here. So as I mentioned, the Rangers are in first place in the Metro Division at the time of this episode. Also at the time of this episode, they are getting ready to go on a West Coast road trip starting in Vegas against the defending Stanley Cup champion Vegas Golden Knights. So it will not get any easier for the Blue Shirts in this road trip here. But that will be at a later date. But as far as where I stand with this team so far, I like what I'm seeing from them. I really, really do. You know, they started out 18-4-1, an excellent start to the season. I know they've had a few bumps in the road as far as injuries. You know, they recently had a 4-game losing streak, first 4-game llosing streak of the season. First time they've done that all year, which is really amazing if you think about it, considering the fact that you can clearly see that even at 18-4-1, this team clearly had flaws going into the season, and they're still kind of showing. But nonetheless, this team just continues to surprise everybody in the National Hockey League. They just continue to find ways to win. And Kyle, I guess I'll start with you here. What have you thought about the New York Rangers so far as we head to the second half of the season? Because me personally, I was expecting them to do well, but not this well. You know, I still have my doubts about them going into the playoffs this year, but so far throughout this regular season, you got to be really, really impressed with how this team has been doing.
Yeah, like there were a lot of questions to start before the season began, right? And I think the biggest one was kind of surrounding with Lafreniere, and just, depending on how he was going to develop going into this year, and I think what's a contract year for him anyway, or
Yeah,
close to whatever it may be.
He had signed a 2-year contract in the offseason, and
Right.
I literally said it was a proven contract, and so far he's proven it.
And that's the thing, right? It seems to be working well, and it also helps too, especially in that division when guys like Carolina and the Devils, who were in that top 3 last year, just haven't been able to find reliable goaltending and other issues as well. And the Rangers kind of just did have that really hot start. And in their last 10, I think I'm just reading here, they're 4-5-1 in their last 10. So they're playing 500 hockey a little bit here, but in terms of how they started the year, like you start off hot, right? And you expect that come trade deadline and closer to when the playoffs approach, that this team's just going to be rested and ready to go, right? So, like in terms of kind of who surprised me, like I think a lot of people could say Lafreniere has surprised a lot of people. I want to go a different direction. I think Jonathan Quick's been phenomenal for this team so far.
100%.
Just quickly looking at his stats here, like he's got a .915 save percentage with a 2.49 goals against average. And this is backing up Shesterkin, right? So it's probably one of the bigger reasons why this Rangers team has been so good for so long. And it's because you have reliable goaltending. And we've kind of seen it all across the league when it comes to the Leafs and their goaltending issues, the Hurricanes and their goaltending issues, and the list goes on, right? But it really does help when you have a guy like Shesterkin, and mentioning his stats real quick, he's got a .906 save percentage with a 2.80 goals against average, and that's your starter, right? So having like those kind of comparable stats in net really helps go in the in the long run. And in terms of like this top 6 for this Rangers team, they've all proven it. Just looking at the guys who are producing points this year. I mean, Panarin's already at 60 points this year. Trocheck and Zibanejad, Kreider, like the usual suspects are still there providing help for this team, and it's proving well so far. And it's something that you hope would help going into the playoffs, as well as that they can kind of keep up that consistency.
Serena, what about you? What have you thought about the Rangers so far?
Well, it's like you guys were pretty much, I think, Kyle, you hit the nail on the head with everything I was thinking. They're playing 500 hockey over their last 20 games.
Yes.
So their first 23 games or whatever, 18-4-1, and now they're playing 500 hockey. They lost a few, they were winless in 4, and then they won the last couple. That's the way it's going to go. There are a ton of teams around the NHL doing that this year. Teams are just doing it at different times. It's a very bizarre year. But I watched a game earlier in which Jonathan Quick played, and I lived in California for 10 years. I watched him play live a lot. And the first thing out of my mouth was they should be starting Quick and make Shesterkin fight for that job back. Because if you have goaltenders, I don't care who's making more money. If the way Quick played, he deserves to be a starter. It's not taking anything away from Shesterkin. But as you head into the playoffs, you have to have a clarified number 1 goaltender. Going back and forth is great in the middle of the season, but if you don't solidify who your starter is, you're going to have a really tough go in the playoffs. And speaking about Lafreniere, to be honest, he doesn't surprise me because I watched him play junior. I think there's still more to come from him.
I agree.
Think he is just a phenomenal hockey player, and I feel like they're weaving him in very well, and I think something's going to click. Something's going to click the way Huberdeau clicked with Barkov in Florida. Something's going to click with Lafreniere, and it's just going to be explosive. But he's young. He does battle. He has battled severe injuries in the past. But I agree with Kyle 100%, and I want to contribute more. Another player that I feel like is really stepping up is Trocheck.
Oh, my God, yes.
When he left Florida, they were devastated here. And from what I understand, he left because of attitude problems. It was, get out. You're going to Carolina where no one cares. And you want to act a fool, you're leaving. And I really feel like he's turned things around a lot, and he's having a great year. I really enjoy watching him play.
Yeah, Trocheck's definitely been he's been worth his contract as of recently. Actually, at the time of this episode here, Trocheck's got 14 goals, 29 assists, 43 points, and a plus-minus rating of +2 in 43 games played this season. He is just absolutely on fire. And Kyle, you brought up Panarin. Artemi Panarin is having probably one of the best seasons of his career so far, especially with the Rangers. He just came off playing his 400th game as a Ranger, and congratulations to him, by the way. That's amazing. And I said before the season started, I play the over-under game, and I said that Artemi Panarin has a chance to get 100 points this season. He's got 60. He's 40 away from that mark. If he hits 100 points, he should be way up higher in the Hart Trophy conversation.
And it's nice, but at the end of the day, and Jimmy, you know this as of last year, when myself and Neil from Devil's State of Mind were covering that series last year between the Devils and the Rangers, they were nowhere to be seen.
Let's not revisit that again.
Well, let's be honest here for a second, right? Like, I mean, you look back in the biggest game of the year for what it was for the Rangers last year, nobody showed up. It was a 4-0 loss to the Devils. See you later, right? And I think for me, like in terms of the regular season and the awards, like I think for these guys, it's nice at the end of the day to get the Hart Trophy for Panarin if that's where it goes. But, they all know what the ultimate prize is at the end of the day, and they need to get the job done in the playoffs. And they've seen, way too many teams in the past finish number one and get knocked out in the first round, right? And for me personally, just looking at it overall in the Eastern Conference, and even in the West too, it's anybody's game. Anybody can get hot at a really good time. Everybody's playing fairly well at this time of year, and you look at those teams who are currently in playoff contention, and we said it all last year during the playoffs. Nobody expected Florida to get all the way to the Stanley Cup final, right? So I think with this Rangers team, like results matter, right? You're in New York, you play at MSG, you're an original 6 team. You got to prove it when it counts, right? And you can't expect this team to go into the first round this year and have another first round knockout. So I'm curious to see what they'll do at the deadline, but it's all willy-nilly and it's nice right now. But for me with this team, you got to get the job done when it counts.
Listen, we know hockey games move fast, but with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL, you can score faster than anything happening on the ice. This week, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Want Vezina Trophy odds? Thatcher Demko at plus 380, Jeremy Swayman at plus 550. I would go with Thatcher Demko, but that's just me. What you want to bet on is up to you. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code THPN. New customers can bet just $5 on the NHL and get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook with code THPN. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY at 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas. 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See sportsbook.draftkings.com/hockey terms for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gambling resources. NHL and the NHL Shield are registered trademarks of the National Hockey League. Copyright NHL 2024, all rights reserved. Yeah, we'll talk about the deadline in a little bit because I'm really curious to see what the Rangers do there. But, Serena, we talked about it with players who need to step up here. I think that, people are probably going to kill me for saying this. I know that Nick Bonino leads all forwards in blocked shots this season, but regardless, Bonino really hasn't done much for me. I get it. It's a 1-year contract for a reason. And I said I like the 1-year contract because if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And you saw it with guys like Bonino, Blake Wheeler, Riley Nash, and even Jonathan Quick. But Jonathan Quick seems to be the one who's proving that he wants to stay here. And he's got at least 1 or 2 more good years left in the tank when everybody thought he was done. But that's another conversation for another day. But for me, the player that needs to step up the most the second half of the season is Nick Bonino. If he doesn't, it's obvious that he's out of there.
I agree with that. I also feel just like on every other team, there are a lot of guys on your third and fourth lines that are going to make or break how you do in the playoffs. So everybody's got their top guys, right? Like we talk about the Hart Trophy. And obviously as an Oiler fan, I mean, Connor McDavid was robbed when Austin Matthews, like, come on, really? It's a league thing. It's speaking of voting, right? But,
you're not wrong there.
There's a lot of guys who are really like a Nate McKinnon stands out on his team so much. But I think the thing with Panarin, he's not a flashy guy and he's not a spotlight guy. So Panarin's the guy that's going to squeak in and get 100 points, and everyone's going to go, holy crap, Panarin had 100 points? I didn't even notice, because he's just a silent killer. And, you know, it's hard to believe to me that his highest goal ever season was 32. But he's also a different style of player. In my opinion, for Panarin to get 100 points, that's an appropriate amount, but it seems like almost a lot for him, because he's like not the same style as a Barkov, but a Barkov is never going to get 100 points, but he's effective in other ways. And Panarin is such a special player, you know, but if he pulls his weight in the way he's supposed to, and Trocheck does, and the goaltending does, and all that, that's where, you know, you kind of look to the playoffs and think, like, what's going to happen here? Could the Rangers be beat in the first round of the playoffs? Absolutely.
Yes, they could.
On paper, they're a great hockey team. And I'm a big Glenn Sader fan, so I've always followed the Rangers. Right. But do I want to see them win? For sure. If I had to pull for anybody in the East, it's the Rangers. But there's a disconnect somewhere. There's something.
Yeah, I mean, that is not inaccurate in any stretch of the imagination. You know, again, that's what makes me nervous, is that, you know, Panarin is having an historic season. Trocheck's having a great year. Zibanejad is finally starting to heat things up. Kreider is another player that needs to step up. He's been awfully quiet the past month or so. I'm very concerned about Chris Kreider's play. Igor Shesterkin, though, in my humble opinion, Serena, when you said that I'll get to you in a minute, Kyle. I apologize. But Serena, I agree with you. You know, Jonathan Quick has been nothing short of amazing. I know he's lost his last few games, but if you really look at the way he's been playing, he was carrying the team on his back. They weren't helping him at all. And the same thing goes with Igor Shesterkin. I know Shesterkin is not having a Shesterkin-type season, but even still, the team's not helping him out. And you need to have the ability to play defense in front of your goalie and block shots. You have to clog up the zone and help them. But if you don't, doom is going to happen come playoff time. And those players that have to step up, like Panarin, when it comes to the playoffs, if that does not happen, then there will be a first round exit. But go ahead, Kyle. I'm sorry.
No, I actually wanted to ask a question. Just wanted your guys' thoughts, because you know, you guys acquired Blake Wheeler this offseason, and just quickly looking at his stats through 43 games, he's only got 7 goals and 10 assists. Is this somebody that you're kind of worried about, or is this really the type of acquisition that they had during the offseason where, you know, he's going to really fill in a necessary role come playoff time?
I mean, listen, man, when it comes to Blake Wheeler, look, I like Blake Wheeler, but you know, I know a lot of Ranger fans are probably going to absolutely kill me for this, but if you can just mix and match him on a line, as a matter of fact, keep him on the line with Johnny Brzezinski, because that last game, he seemed to have had a connection there. If you keep him on that third, fourth line, he might actually do some things. Now, look, I will say, he has not impressed me at all this season. He hasn't. Look, 7 goals, 10 assists, 17 points. That really is nothing to write home about. But don't forget, the man is 38 years old. He's past the prime of his career. There's no question about it. But if you keep him on the third line with that connection with Brzezinski, I think he might have a chance to do something here. I'm not saying he's going to turn into like an MVP caliber player, but even still, he might get to at least 15 goals if he stays on that third line. That's just my opinion.
I think he's capable. We've seen what he's capable of. He kind of reminds me, though, of like every time you're like, where's Patrick Kane going to go? And then what's he going to do? Right. You never know what you're going to get with Patrick Kane when he signs on here and here and here and here. Blake Wheeler kind of remind me the same thing. The potential is there. You just don't know what you're going to get. And I think the thing, like with you talked about Blake Wheeler being 38, he's past his prime, whatever. I think it's just because it just went like this.
Yep.
He was like, yeah. And then it just tanked and everyone's like, what just happened? This is not what we signed up for. It just shows you that there's guys that have different dynamic on different teams.
Exactly. And it's like a culture shock, right? When he goes all of a sudden from freezing cold Winnipeg to, the big city in New York, right? It's different, right? And it's going to hit different.
By the way, it's still freezing cold, but that's beside
sure. And it's, for some players, they can fit in very well. And for others, it's just different, right? And it's just how it is. So no, I was more or less just curious about that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're fine. But, now that we are 43 games in at the time of this episode, Rangers have started the second half already. They've won 2 straight games. Serena, what do you expect from this Ranger team now that the second half is underway? Do you expect more of the same thing? Do you expect them to be better? And more importantly, what do you expect from them when it comes to the playoffs? Do you think that Artemi Panarin finally breaks out of his playoff slump? What do you expect from this team in the second half in the playoffs?
I honestly don't really expect anything dramatic either way. I don't think they're all of a sudden going to go back to 18-4 in their last remaining games or whatever. Or, you know what I mean? The next 25 games like they did at the start of the season, because everyone's settling in now. Guys' legs are getting tired. People are getting blown out halfway through the season. It's hard. I think that they're strong enough, though, to stay steady. They're going to head into the playoffs in a good position, in a good place. And I generally don't like to predict in the playoffs because you never know what's going to happen.
We're all wrong. We're all wrong.
No. I get it.
Last year's playoffs were a prime example of what just happened here. And so do I think the Rangers can win a series? Yeah, of course. Unfortunately, I don't really see them going a lot further. They have such good defense, though. Like if you look around the whole league, nobody has Stanley Cup caliber defense. Nobody. No. But the Rangers, it's not bad. It's pretty good.
It certainly has been better than the past decade, which I've been barking at them for literally a decade about has been their defensive play. But please continue. I'm sorry.
I feel you. As an Oiler fan, it's the same. It's like pulling teeth every year. But I just don't think there's a lot of good defensemen that are coming out of junior hockey or college hockey really that much anymore. It's kind of become a little different situation in that regard. But that's neither here nor there. It's just I think that they're capable of doing something good. They have good defensemen. They have great goaltending. Whoever they decide to go with is going to be the right choice.
Yes.
They can't have a wrong choice. So, but they need to make a decision in the last probably 20 games of this. I mean, I think Shesterkin is their starter and that's fine and whatever.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't count out Jonathan Quick. I said from 2 months ago, the first time I saw Quick play this year, I'm like, he needs to be the starter. He needs to be going in. He's standing on his head. That guy still has spunk, and he's no spring chicken either.
And to your point, I think with Shesterkin, if he ends up starting game 1 in the playoffs, he might be on a short leash, right?
Yes.
Agreed.
If it doesn't go well in game 1, maybe even game 2, they're going to pull that leash very quickly and decide to go with Jonathan Quick, right? And I think over the years, you started to see with a lot of other teams, a lot of goaltenders probably will be on that short leash too, right? Like if things don't go well early on, maybe we do need to shake it up a little bit and throw this other guy in, which is so important for the Rangers because they have 2 goaltenders that have been very reliable for them this season.
Well, plus Jonathan Quick's proven in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So, you have a guy that's like watching
He just won a Stanley Cup last year despite not playing that much with Vegas.
He didn't play a game.
Yeah, he kind of went all over the place and then he ended up there. But it's like watching an international tournament. You only have 6 games. You get 1 starter. If they don't start and they don't do well in that first game, they're gone.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, you're right. And by the way, speaking of the Rangers defense, not only has Jacob Trouba been an absolute wall this season with blocking shots like crazy, and shout out to the captain, Jacob Trouba, and he and his wife just had their first child, so congratulations to the Trouba family. But Kaapo Kakko coming back is massive for them. I understand that, Ranger fans haven't been that high on Kaapo Kakko, but the man got hurt and missed multiple months this season. I'm not saying that Kaapo Kakko is going to be a bust like some Ranger fans are, but him returning is massive because if you look at his style of play, his defense is severely underrated. Nobody talks about his defensive style of play. And by the way, in his second game back the other night, he scored. That is going to be massive for this team, especially entering this second half and hopefully come playoff time. Kaapo Kakko is a huge, huge return for the Rangers.
You're not going to get too many Finns that are a bust.
Yeah.
Finns
Oh, yeah.
And Swedes don't usually bust up.
Yeah.
It was a little shock. To be honest, I'm a little shocked when I look at like Rasmus Dahlin in Buffalo. He was such a stud at the World Juniors, such a stud. And I thought, wow, Buffalo is in for a treat. And he really, maybe he just kind of hasn't come into his own. Maybe it's the environment, whatever. But I think Kaapo Kakko is going to be the same. Watching him play in juniors, like he's just so good.
Yeah.
Is it concerning though with Kakko where he's played 22 games this year, obviously before his injury, and he's only accounted for 3 goals, right? I'd be more or less curious with Kakko and like where he really fits into this lineup once March kind of rolls around, once they start kind of figure out, okay, this is the structure that we want to use going to playoff time. You know, is he going to be a power play 2 kind of guy? Is he going to be a penalty kill? Like, I want to know more or less like what's his role going to be, because it seems like they have a fair amount of goal scorers on this team already. I'm just more or less curious to see where he really fits into this lineup come playoff time.
That's a fair point. I can't disagree with that, Kyle. And speaking of March, that is when the NHL trade deadline is. So with that being said, Kyle, what do you expect the Rangers to do come the trade deadline? Do you expect them to go after another defender? Do they need another winger? Do they need a center? What do you think they need?
You don't have to make a move, right? And I think there's a fair amount of teams in this league that, you know, yeah, you want to go all for it, but if you have nothing wrong with the structure and like you've had a good year, sometimes with teams like you might not need to make a massive splash, right? You know, if anything, I think come playoff time, it's always important to maybe grab that extra defender in the back end in case of injury, right? Because injuries are very common come playoff time anyway. So, you know, for them, it might be important to just grab an extra healthy defenseman, grab an extra bottom 6 guy, whatever it may be, to kind of help out with that cause a little bit. So, you know, with this team, I think you're not really looking for top 6. You're not really looking for top 4 D-man wise. You know, goaltenders are clearly fine. I think if anything, you just want to make sure this team can be as healthy as possible and be ready for the worst in case there's an injury that does come up and that you need to fill that slot quickly.
Serena, what about you?
I agree completely. I think that everybody's so wanting to see some big moves or whatever if needed. But look at the Panthers last year. They weren't even in a playoff spot and they didn't make any moves. They didn't really make any big moves. And look what happened. So I think they were more focused, like talking to Panthers people, it was like when they went to the Stanley Cup in 96 and when they went to Stanley Cup last year, the biggest thing was that they were a team. They had a team of guys, quality human beings. And I think that what's happening with the Rangers right now is they're still kind of trying to build that. Not that it's not there, but they've got the puzzle pieces in place. So why would they make a big move? You know, there's just no, who would you trade? And listen, having said that, I'm not a big fan of trade rumors. I feel like nobody's ever right. No one ever gets it right. So all of a sudden, yeah, it was like when Trocheck left here, nobody saw that coming. And it's just, you never know what's going to happen. So I don't want to say never, but I don't feel like they need to. I feel like they're in a good spot.
Trade Igor Shesterkin for Connor McDavid. Can that happen?
Yeah, a couple of firsts to go along with it.
I'm messing around. There's no way in hell Connor McDavid is going to leave Edmonton anytime soon. And speaking of Edmonton, before we wrap up the show, Serena, you are an Oilers fan. You are from Canada. They've won 11 in a row. What are you thinking about your Oilers? Are they going to make the playoffs? And if so, what do you expect?
The Oilers are going to make the playoffs.
Okay.
And I think probably the start of the season, it felt like someone put a metal bucket over my head and was hitting me with a baseball bat. And it was like, is this ever going to stop? Like, and the worst part, and everybody that I've talked to here, general managers and whatever, they're like, oh, the Oilers are going to be fine. They have way too much talent to not recover from this. But every game I watched, I'm like, how did we not win that game? And here in Florida, it was like they had won, I think, I want to say it was something like 6 or 8 in a row. They came to Florida, blew a 2-goal lead in Tampa, blew a 2-goal lead in Sunrise. And I'm like, you have to be kidding me. And they go and whatever, and they win 11 in a row now. And they have the talent. They have the talent. But kind of like what we were talking about with the defensemen, when I watched Vegas last year here, I got to go to game 4 here. And Vegas was by far the better team. They were, I knew it because I watched the Panthers play all year, and they're not a Stanley Cup contender. They weren't. And I see the things that Vegas does, getting the puck out of their own end efficiently. The Florida, as my dad would say, looks like a bunch of coyotes running around because it was just scrambling. They didn't know what to do. And every time Vegas got the puck, they would regroup. They would go out of their own end. Everything was fine.
Yeah.
The thing that concerns me the most with Edmonton is they don't have the defense to do that. Yes, they're putting up points. Yes, that's obviously huge. But the goaltending thing has been an issue. The defensemen are, even Evan Bouchard is putting up so many points, but he's not a great defensive player. We just don't really have a lot of great defensemen. So, they're going to make playoffs for sure. They're strong. They should be a contending team.
Yeah.
Realistic.
What about you?
Yeah.
What do you think?
I'm more or less curious at what they'll do with the deadline, and maybe, Serena, I'd like your thoughts on it too, because you said it exactly. Like, for me, the biggest issue is, defensively outside of maybe Evan Bouchard and maybe Ekholm too, who I think has played well as of late in this stretch. Where, like, is it important for them if you feel like they don't add a goaltender at the deadline, or maybe some pieces on that back end on defense? How concerned are you going to be going into the playoffs if they happen to lock down a spot?
I don't think there's really much we can do about the goaltending. I think we're in a spot, there's just nothing. Who are they going to get, right? And when I watched in 2006, when they went to the Stanley Cup final, they were playing their backup goaltender through the whole playoffs, and they almost won. They should have won. And goaltending wasn't a thing. So, realistically, teams can win the Stanley Cup without a super, super strong goaltender. It just depends how hot they are. But
last year.
Yep, exactly.
But Bobrovsky was the only reason Florida was where they were last year, and everybody knows it.
I wouldn't say only him and Matthew Tkachuk were on fire. You got to give Tkachuk credit too.
Yeah, I'll never give Tkachuk credit for anything, A. And B, like Tkachuk is a team guy. They like him in the dressing room. He's a good team player. And it's funny being in Florida because they watch the Panthers and they're Panthers fans, but they're not huge hockey fans.
Right.
So they're like, oh yeah, but all these players were hurt. I'm like, everyone's hurt in the playoffs. You can't. Sorry, boo. Like Leon Draisaitl was playing on a broken ankle, or like. Yep. I'm like, you can't. Everybody's hurt.
You had Barclay Goodrow this year playing with part of his jaw missing.
Yes.
What are we talking about here?
Yeah. So it's like, Bobrovsky was the reason, like he just stood on his head. And so everybody's like, what Bobrovsky are we going to get over the next 40 games? Because it can go either it's one or the other. But as far as, the Oilers or any other team making any moves, I don't really know who, because I think the biggest question, and not that I expect him to get traded, but the biggest drama around contracts is Steve Stamkos. Like, they would be insane to trade him. They won't. But, I can't really think of too many other guys who are like, oh, something's got to happen.
Their GM said, I think, that Stamkos wasn't going to get moved regardless.
Oh, sure.
Right?
Yeah.
If they trade Steven Stamkos, you're basically waving the white flag on the season saying it's over.
Yeah. Well, they won't. But it just, for comparison purposes, there's not really too many other guys that are like coming to that point in their contracts right now, or teams that want to pick up. Like, if you look back, if it was me, if I was a general manager, I would be super gun shy looking at the Tkachuk-Huberdeau trade. because
Yeah.
everybody that went the complete opposite of what everyone thought it was going to. And look at Huberdeau's tied up, I think, $10.5 million or something. Like, everyone's going, wait a second, do I want to pick up a guy that I don't know how he's going to be? So if nobody's really willing to juggle anything, like, you know, it's like Anaheim and San Jose are in the bottom of the league. Like, are they really, they don't really have anybody to trade. They're not going to, you know, and teams like the Rangers are kind of still in a good spot. Boston in a great position. They're not going to trade anybody. The Panthers, it would be suicide if the Panthers traded somebody.
Although I kept hearing rumors that apparently the Rangers have been linked to Trevor Zegras, and I'm saying there's no way in hell that is going to happen. No way.
I wouldn't say no. You never know, because, listen, Anaheim, they have to decide who they want to build their franchise around now. That's fair. Once they lost Ryan Getzlaf, it was like, okay, what are we going to do? Who are we going to put our stock into? Maybe they've decided listen, from my standpoint, if it's not Trevor Zegras yet, it's never going to be Trevor Zegras.
That's fair.
He hasn't done shit. Like, not in my opinion. They've only won 15 games this year. And they have some pretty talented guys, some players that they've drafted, like Mason McTavish coming out of junior, like guys that are good hockey players. Yeah, if anybody makes a trade, I feel like it'll be somebody bizarre like the Kings, who were doing great and now they've tanked like the last 8 games in a row. Maybe something like that to shake them up a little bit. But the Rangers getting Zegras would be a great fit for them. Absolutely.
It would.
That's interesting.
It would.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's interesting with the Kings, actually. Before you quickly mention, sorry to cut you off.
No, go
I
ahead.
didn't even realize it, but they're 1-5-4 in their last 10 games. Like, you know, all of a sudden Edmonton's knocking on the door for that 3 seed. So you might be right. Actually, that's interesting. I didn't really pay attention to that.
Well, Edmonton's going like this, and the Kings are going like this, and Edmonton's still 3 points behind them.
I was gonna say at the time of this episode, the Oilers are in 4th place in the Pacific at 24, 15-1, 1 point behind the Kings, who are currently third in the Pacific.
But you know, it's always hard to say like what's gonna happen. Like, people always ask me like, who's gonna finish in the top of the league? I don't know, and to be honest, it doesn't matter. Who cares? Go ahead, have the President's Trophy.
I was going to say that literally who finishes on top of the league does not matter, because they tend to do trash in the playoffs sometimes anyway. So it really doesn't matter who finishes at the top. You could literally finish. You could be like the Florida Panthers were. They were an 8th seed, a second wild card team, and they made it all the way to Stanley Cup final. The Boston Bruins were at the top of the league last year, and they crapped the bed against that same Panthers team. So you can't tell me that, the first in the league is the best team. Not necessarily all the time, people.
I think what's really interesting when you look at it like this, because I heard it all from down here. So all the Panthers fans thought, because Boston had the greatest record of all time last year, they all thought that made the Panthers better because they beat Boston. I'm like, it doesn't work like that. Like, hockey's a weird thing. That's why there's a 7-game series. It's not like football where there's 1 game. So you never know what's going to happen. But the Panthers don't need a shakeup. But if I look at someone like the Kings, they probably need a shakeup. A team like Washington, if I was them, I would get rid of somebody, because they're tanking hard and they've got like one last chance to get somebody for somebody. You know, they've held on to guys for a long time. And I said that at the start of this year, this is going to be the Tampa Bay Lightning's last kick at the can for a long time, because they're going to be the Pittsburgh Penguins of 10 years ago.
Yeah, I literally said that same thing about the Pittsburgh Penguins. I think this is their last chance too. With that core of Malkin, Crosby, and Letang, I think this is it for them.
I just don't even think they have a chance, to be honest. And that's how I feel about Tampa, because you hold on to those guys, but I don't have a problem with teams being loyal to their players. But you hold on to these guys, and then you just get to the point where you're like, probably not going to win another Stanley Cup. There's younger, faster teams like the Rangers coming. But New Jersey, holy man, are they fast? Wow. They knocked my socks off the other night. They dominated the Panthers. Dominated. But they're so fast. The Panthers have a hard time with teams that are fast. Their Panthers are gritty, whatever. But even the Kings were here. The Kings should have beat them.
Yeah.
Kings play well. They come out of their own end with the puck well. They don't make any mistakes, and they just had terrible luck that night.
100%. 100% right. I have no arguments there, nor do I want to argue with something like that. But anyway, that is beside the point. That is going to wrap it up for this episode of From the Blue Seats, a New York Rangers podcast presented by SeatGeek. SeatGeek is your #1 source for the best deals on sporting events, concerts, comedy shows, and a whole lot more. Go to SeatGeek.com or download the SeatGeek app and use promo code BLUESEATS for $20 off your first ticket purchase. Kyle, Serena, this was such a pleasure. Thank you guys so much for hopping on with me. And Serena, before we let you go, how can people find out more about the Cats and Bolts podcast with your husband, Rod?
So we do the Cats and Bolts podcast. The episodes usually come out Thursdays. It's just Cats, CATSN, Bolts. And we try to talk, as much Tampa as we can. But if we have a Panthers guest, because they're local, we talk a little bit more. But there's always a lot of opinionated stuff from me on there. This is my first time with you, so I held back a little. But if you want to see some sass, you can go check that out.
I like it.
Nice.
And Kyle's basically all over the map at this point, but that's another discussion for another day. But no, in all seriousness, guys, it was such a pleasure. You guys are always welcome back anytime you want. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jimmy. Thank you.
Okay, anytime, guys. Go subscribe to the Cats and Bolts podcast right here on this fine network. And please be sure you follow the Hockey Podcast Network on all social media as well. Again, that's going to do it for us. Thank you so much for watching and or listening. If you enjoyed this content, make sure you smash that like button on YouTube and subscribe on YouTube and on all audio platforms. And please rate us 5 stars. It would mean the world to us. I want to hear from you. What do you expect from the Rangers the second half of the year? And do you expect them to make a move at the trade deadline? Let us know on social media at BlueSeats94. Use hashtag BlueSeats. Or if you're watching on YouTube, leave a comment down below and keep the conversation going. Until the next episode, I'm Jimmy Fanizzi. This is From the Blue Seats, a New York Rangers podcast. Go Blue Shirts, and I'll catch you next time. Peace!